Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, January 27th, 2024. Best be. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. Great show for you today. If it's Tuesday or Thursday, you know the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, and the Dean, Bill Kurelic, will be here. We're going to talk about Jake Cook. We're going to talk about defensive linemen making commitments. We are going to get all caught up on Cruton. And this is the place to do it. But first, what's the best way to learn a language? Immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel is a science-backed language learning app that actually works. Their 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts, help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. The advantages of being able to speak a different language when you travel or when you're reading a foreign language are innumerable. And we have a special limited time deal for our listeners right now. Get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bucknuts. BABBEL.com/bucknuts. Rules and restrictions may apply. All right. Two guys that are never ruled over and never restricted. The Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, and the Dean, Bill Kurelic, getting adjusted. Gentlemen, talk about big dudes today to start the show. There are two defensive linemen that are about to make their commitment, or the vibe is trending that way, and we've just posted our commitment report and evaluation via the great Mark Porter on Jake Cook, and we will get to that. But first, Bill, can you bring us up to speed on the recruitments of Trajan Odom and Maxwell Roy?
Well, I have crystal balled both of them to Ohio State. So if I'm right, that is a very good thing that Ohio State would get those two. They are certainly two guys that Ohio State likes a lot. In the case of Trajan Odom, I expect his announcement of the two to be the first one to announce. We look for him to announce sometime tomorrow on Friday. That seems most likely. And it's been three schools really: Ohio State, Oregon, USC. We made official visits to all three. Good morning, Deetra. Always good to have you in the house, and Mika as well. But it's all those have been the three schools for quite some time. I just think that when he announces his decision, it's going to be the Buckeyes. I've given them the edge for a while. When I do my in or out feature, I've had him in the class. And when I've done my if I had to predict now feature, I've had him in the class, and I still have him in the class. Maxwell Roy, he made an official visit to Michigan this weekend, and a lot of people felt like, well, it was going to be Michigan. They got the last shot and all that, if you go by the last visit theory being that important. But I look for it to be Ohio State. Rutgers is the other school. A number of weeks ago, he told me it's down to three schools: Ohio State, Rutgers, and Michigan, and I look for Ohio State to win that battle as well.
You know, we've talked for years here, literally over, decades, about the Glenville pipeline, Bill. Have they gone into their coffers through NIL and built a St. Joe's pipeline? This is getting a little bit silly here. Marvin Harrison, Kyle McCord, Jim Knowles, the current guys coming in. When was the last time you could remember Ohio State doing this well at a school that far away?
Boy, it doesn't happen well. Back a while back, I guess you'd say, you had Fort Lauderdale and Aquinas. Yep. That was one.
Aquinas, yeah, sure.
I guess that would be the one that comes to mind right away.
The
An
Bosa
out-of-state
boys,
player.
yep,
Yeah, and a football powerhouse in both cases.
for sure.
Aquinas
very
is kind of
impressive.
tailed off for the Ohio State now, but St. Joe, maybe, as you say, maybe they're taking their place now.
It's impressive. The transfer from South Carolina, Isaiah West, the running back, like I said, Jim Knowles. So we are good to go. Let's talk about Maxwell Roy here, Mark. We'll throw his video up here. Always good when you battle that school up north and come out on top, allegedly.
Yeah, and what we're looking at is a defensive tackle here, and he looks like he's very active and athletic. You can see him running the ball in that last clip. He was more like an athlete running the ball. Great get off there, great push, awareness to run down a screen pass from behind. Wow, seeing him opening up in the field there. I know that's why that's one of his second clips that shows off what type of an athlete he is. Looks like you can move him the slant and angle there. It looks like he was on a stun inside and blew up the gap. So very athletic inside guy, probably a 3 technique, a penetrator. Really liked his hands there, the way he snapped that lineman and pushed him back into the backfield. When these guys have a great punch and heavy hands, that translates into some great football. Nice job coming down the line, beating the scoop block, people trying to take out his legs. Yeah, this is one of these rare types you see inside that can move like that. Usually the bigger guys inside don't have that type of feet and that explosion. Very complete package in there.
Kind of interesting, too, because Michigan, and deservedly so, has gotten a lot of credit recently for their defensive tackles. So to get one that they wanted a ton obviously does not hurt. Let's bring up Odom when you get a chance. Here he is, Odom. North Carolina, Bill. And Mark, take it away.
Yeah, let's get a clip here. You see him come from the inside. Yeah, this looks like your long defensive end type here. Yeah, I mean, I didn't see his weight. I don't know if Bill had it. I think I just started playing the clip without looking at his height weight before this started. But
Odom's about 6'4", 285.
Oh my Lord!
No, I was gonna say,
yeah,
not 240, Mark.
You know what? The way he got off the ball there, and
why.
the way he looked long and lean. If you would have said 240, but oh my, if that's 285 pounds, he looks like one of the better players we've seen on this defensive line. Actually, my eyebrows are probably perking up a little bit because this guy is explosive. I mean, he looks like he could be an edge player, but he's playing on the inside there. That swim move was about as lightning fast as a swim move I've seen in a while. Yeah, I really like this kid. It's funny when you watch two kids back to back, you can see slight differences in what they're doing. And I kind of like the way this kid's a little longer, a little more explosive, might have a little more value to him in the recruiting world. I don't know what their rankings are with 24/7. I kind of like doing these things blind, so I get a real raw evaluation. But wow, that's an impressive looking kid if he's 285 pounds. That's last player had rare explosion. This is really, very interesting to see how this will end up with him.
In the case of Odom, they've told him that Ohio State has told him that if he's a Buckeye, he could play just about anywhere across the front, but mostly 3 technique, they've told him.
I tell you what throws you off is that single digit. You see a defensive tackle wearing a single digit, your brain already goes to edge, and then he starts flying through there with that impeccable girth. And I will tell you this, Bill, and I'd just like you to comment on this. We started doing, when Larry Johnson arrived about a decade ago, every single person recruiting against him would talk about his advanced age and possible eagerness to exit the profession. I think every single person who used that has left the job they are in, and Larry Johnson is still in the same job. It's incredible that was used for so long. Literally, like Saban used to use that. He gone. They've had a real run on defensive linemen here. What do you attribute that to? Is it just sustained excellence, help in the recruiting field, Larry catching a stride? But I know there's still some concerns about one side of the trenches. The other side, defensive line, they are cruising.
Some of that concern baffled me. People thought for a while Ohio State can't get any defensive tackles. Well, they've gotten good defensive tackles. Will Smith's class, they had 3 defensive tackles. Now, maybe they weren't 5 stars, but they were good players, legitimate 4 stars. So they've been able. It was that one period where they missed out on the 3 defensive ends, Keon Keeley and Anungielea and who was the other one? I'd have to think for a second. But they missed out on the 3 defensive ends, and people were.
It was a DC guy.
Dylan Stewart. They missed out on him. Yeah, just for a year or two in there, they were kind of missing on the defensive ends. They were to some extent. But other than that, I'll go back. Before Larry Johnson came to Ohio State, he was at Penn State. And I used to, whenever Ohio State was recruiting a defensive lineman and Larry Johnson was recruiting a defensive lineman for Penn State, I would think, this is going to be tough. Larry Johnson, he is a great, great recruiter. And he has continued to be an outstanding recruiter. I think of him as the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going on and on and on. And, you're starting to hear it again, but he keeps going on and on and on.
I need to apologize to the group. You guys didn't see this, but when I did the ad to start the show, so I'm getting more and more blind as I go. So I looked up into the right corner and it says J letter N27. And I said January, not June. So I apologize to those who, if I altered your mental schedule, that was definitely my fault.
I don't see any snow outside there right now here in Columbus.
Tell you what, people don't like us talking about the weather. We have not had great weather. Today is that day in the Gem City. If you're out, get out and about, hit the links or whatever.
I haven't been able to take my eyes off this Odom tape that's been playing in the background. Boy, I think I'm having a man crush thing here where you kind of fall in love with this kid. And I actually have 2 screens going, and I'm watching Roy on one, and I'm going back and forth. When you watch them together, you're like, this one's the 3 technique, this is the 1 technique. So Roy is looking a little heavier and thicker, and the explosiveness he has, I was like, put him at 3. But no, you get these 2 together in tandem. That's a nice little package there as I'm enjoying the defensive line here.
And then we'll have
by the way, the 2 of them, I got questions yesterday. Could they both be in the same class, or yes, they both could be in the same class at Ohio State. I would not have crystal balled both of them to Ohio State if they both couldn't be in the same class at Ohio State. So the answer to that is an unequivocal yes, they could be in the same class together. There is room for them.
All right. Bill, a lot of questions about Jordan Davidson, running back from modern day. At one point in time, crystal ball to Ohio State. They now have 2 running backs in the fold in Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that he won't be in the class, a Buckeyes class. They really like the 2 that they have commitments from. And I mean really like those 2 guys, Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Bo Jackson, they feel like his potential is off the chart. Speed. He's a long strider. They really like him. Isaiah West, as I've mentioned, been told by people at Ohio State, they feel like he's the most underrated running back in the country. They still absolutely want a 3rd running back in this class. But the 2 guys' names to keep in mind right now are Anthony Turbo Rogers, Alabama commitment, wants to make an Ohio State official visit in the fall. And as of now, I expect that to happen as things stand right now. And then Shakai Mills-Knight is the other guy. He's uncommitted, but they like him as well. Those are the 2 names right now to keep in mind.
Okay, we've got a bunch of questions from the crew, and we will answer those, and then we'll finish the show with a breakdown of Big Jake Cook. But first, you know what it is, ladies and gentlemen, Mark, Bill. It's my pleasure to announce that Smooth Sack Summer is officially upon us and continues. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from top to bottom. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs school while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code BUCKNUTS. Summertime and the trimming is easy. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code BUCKNUTS at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. I think we have some clothing ads coming next week, so that'll be a nice respite for the kids. But let's start at the top here. I'm just going to go down the list here and take as many questions as we can. Let's find one that a lot of people have. And that is
we have to have the obligatory David Sanders.
Let's just start at the top. Let's do a David Sanders. Let's do our Dorian Brew. I've not gotten a Trey McNutt question. If you want to just hedge your bets and answer one of those two, go right ahead.
Sanders, there's not going to be any change from Tuesday to today. He's not going to all of a sudden drop in the I'm committed to. That's not going to happen this quickly. Unless something changes that I don't expect, it's going to take a little time. In fact, D. Sanchez mentioned that at the end of our last podcast, he said, be patient. It's not going to happen. There's not really any big change. It's still, in my opinion, Ohio State-Tennessee battle. And I think it's going to continue that way. And I get back to the thing of, I see all the comments about the NIL with him. I don't know that it's necessarily going to come down to the very bottom dollar. Both schools have very, very good NIL packages on the table. And as someone told me, familiar with his recruitment, think, where does he want to really be? If you took NIL out of it, where would he really want to be? And the NIL offers are there. So it probably will come down to where does he really want to be?
Look at that. Thank you, Kevin Chavis. What's the latest on Trey McNutt?
Well, again, he's taken his June official visits. I don't think anybody can predict right now where he wants to go. I think the big thing right now is, does he commit to somebody before the start of the football season, or does he wait? And then if he does commit to somebody before the start of the football season, he's told me he can still make an official visit to Ohio State during the season. So if he goes to one of those schools before the start of the season, does he go ahead and make the official visit to Ohio State? Those are the two questions to me right now.
Larry should empty the NIL bank for Malik, Atrey, and Jaem Stewart. Want to handle those, Bill? Malik Atrey is the defensive lineman, I believe, who grew up in the shadow of Auburn and is committed verbally to Auburn. And Jaem Stewart is pretty much the toughest guy on the planet. I don't know how. I mean, maybe I'm being a slightly hyperbolic there, but we want him very badly. Go ahead.
Yeah, with Atrey, that one, he has told me he could decide sooner rather than later. In other words, make a final decision sooner rather than later between, and I've been told by good sources, it's either Ohio State or staying with Auburn, one of the two. Even though he made official visits to a couple other schools. Zion Grady is continuing to recruit him for Ohio State. Zion Grady is planning to be at the Ohio State-Michigan game in November, and Atrey could well be along with him. That's very possible, so we'll see. In the case of Jaem Stewart, I still think there's a pretty reasonable chance he's going to reclassify, but he hasn't done that yet. If he does, either way, I still think LSU is the school that has the edge, but Ohio State is in the picture, certainly.
I would encourage those of you who aren't usual viewers of the show, don't participate in the chat. You wouldn't know about Jim Harbaugh's birth and things that possibly went wrong there. So just a little tidbit of following along. Here we go. All right, let's switch to Jake Cook, the large Westerville North interior lineman. There are sometimes we put up pictures of guys and we use the Tyron Smith thing and say, oh, he's going to – Jake Cook looks like an offensive lineman right now. Mark, take it away.
Yeah. I got tipped off to Jake Cook when he was coming out of 8th grade. I had some friends that knew him, and he was absolutely enormous back then, to the point where – the terms like the baby fat was still on him, and he had a little chubbiness to him. He had those chubby cheeks. You can see by these pictures, he's enormous. But then fast forward 3 years or so, and this is him at his showcase I saw this spring here, and you kind of did a double take. You're like, whoa, this isn't the same kid. His body's leaner, the belly's gone, and you're watching him run around there, and you kind of perk up and say, okay. Fast forward to the film right here. We're going to take a look at some of his nastiness that comes off in film. He's a finisher. Look how excited he gets here for that pancake. So he's an offensive lineman's lineman. He's been playing this since he's been little and taking pride in it. I tried to put a lot of clips on here where he was going to block guys right on his nose like he would at nose man as a center or guard. But then what makes him kind of unique here, running blocks, of course, but a lot of these blocks, he's going to get up to the next level. And when you're a center, a lot of times you're going to rub off that nose man and you're going to try to track down these fast-paced linebackers. So you're going to see him here rub off, get onto a linebacker. And a lot of these linebackers in high school are smaller, but they're very quick, and they can kind of duplicate what you're seeing. They're actually a smaller target to locate. And he has a ton of clips where he gets up to that next level, breaks down his feet, locks on, and then run and finishes. Love his body language on film. He's a finisher. He's nasty. You can see him right there. He takes a great angle and is patient to pin that guy inside. He knows he's going to react eventually to the action. Understands the angle of go to where the player is going to be, not where he's at right now. You see again there. So, this is a player, and look at the slap of the hands there. He did that about 10 times on film where he's pretty advanced in his techniques. He'll do it again, slap the hands down. A lot of high school linemen have that type of savvy. That tells me he's been working with O-line, D-line coaches and really working on his craft and perfecting his technique. That's pretty cool to see that coming out of high school. And factor in Justin Fry gave him two personal workouts and really double check this kid to make sure he's really what he wanted inside. And boy, what a great story for, a local kid in Columbus to earn the offer. And it was one of those guys we've been talking about forever. And, I think I mentioned him as a developmental type. Hats off to him for developing. I really enjoy the story.
I also love Jake Cook, and that I love those guys that when I go to see them play their senior season, I go 10 miles or 5 miles away. My kids grew up in the Westerville School District. I live one community over. Sure makes it easy. I'll digress real quick, Dan. Joe Burrow, his senior year, the schedule didn't work out real well at the point, but I had to go to Steubenville.
Yep.
That is a drive. If you have never been to Steubenville from Columbus, it seems like the way you got to get there and all, it takes forever. But still remember going to see Joe Burrow on a Friday night near the end of his high school career, interviewing him on that field and all. Getting to see Jake Cook will be a whole lot easier than that one.
Can I digress about Steubenville for a second?
Absolutely. I was going to digress about Westerville. Steubenville's way better.
Reno Sequoia, I think he has the most wins in Ohio high school history right now, so he's the winningest coach. He is so generous to me or Scouting Ohio when I go down there. One of the most coolest things, people always ask me, where are the coolest places to play in Ohio? That stadium, Death Valley, is one of them. Those fans are on top of you like Thunderdome. It feels like a cage match down there. But the coolest part is that locker room. They have all the bricks in the wall, and every senior signs a brick. And as they added a new weight room, they had to add more bricks. And when you get in the squat rack, you see 1948 squat record. A couple years later, you see the guy that broke it, and then he writes his name in. And a couple years later, the guy who broke that, and he writes his name in. The tradition just drips out of that place like no other place in Ohio. It is truly unique down there on the river. And I know that's not, what we're talking about here at Bucknuts, but you get a chance to see a game there, especially while Reno's still coaching. I would get down there.
Yeah, Steubenville reminds me a little bit of Ironton too, Mark, and similar a little bit. But yeah, it is a really cool place for a high school football game.
My son's freshman team will play at Steubenville this year, and that might be the most excited I am for a freshman game.
Yeah, Steubenville has a really interesting history too. If you read about it, it used to be one of the the home of the great Dean Martin. I believe Jimmy the Greek is from there, and don't hold me to this, but I believe Steubenville at one point in time had more bars per capita than any other city in the United States. So it used to be a tougher spot.
Look at Dan pulling out the trivia.
Well, I actually had a friend from Steubenville. That's why I said that. Don't make me go into Westerville trivia. My roommates from there, my college roommates, and what I was going to say is the Westerville cops frown heavily on underage activities. That's what I learned when I came to visit. We digressed, as we are wont to do. And look at that. Reza from the Wu-Tang Clan used to live in Steubenville, brass tacks, and a lot of Wu-Tang. Who knew we would end with Wu-Tang? That is a first. We have never ended the show talking Wu-Tang, though Bill every day tells me we need to end talking Wu-Tang. And I say, Bill, hold off on the Wu-Tang. All right, we appreciate you guys stopping by. It's June 27th, not January 27th. These guys are ready to go. We'll be around all weekend. Check it out. Have a good one.